Hi, welcome to Just History, and today we're going to be talking about the fastest colonization in world history. Ever since the rediscovery of the Americas by Europe during the Age of Discovery, colonization has been a tool of the European empires to establish control over newly found land. Migration of people from the mother country to these new lands spread millions of Europeans around the globe in places such as the Americas, Australia, Africa, and New Zealand. So where was the fastest colonial expansion during this time of empire? I'll give you a few seconds to take a guess. Alright, time's up. According to the historian Richard Brune, the fastest land occupation occurred in Port Phillip District. Now, some of you may be saying, where the hell is Port Phillip District? Well, it's in present-day Victoria, Australia. Broome calls this colonisation the fastest occupation of land in the history of empires, not just the British Empire. In less than 15 years since the first settlement of Port Phillip District in 1835, European explorers and colonists had carved out nearly 18 million hectares of land without giving too much thought who was on that land. So why was this the fastest colonial expansion in world history? Well, let's have a look at the history. Australia was first colonised by the British in 1788 with the landing of the first fleet at Sydney Cove. This fleet consisted of 1,350 colonists under the command of Captain Arthur Phillip. Australia was meant to be used as a penal colony, so many of the colonists were actually convicted convicts. Many colonists seeking their own fortune in Australia set down the east coast looking for land. In 1802, Lieutenant Colonel David Collins entered the Port Phillip Bay on October 9th and landed somewhere near Sorrento. However, this is disputed by historians. Collins then left as Port Phillip District had poor wood and no fresh water, making colonisation in the area difficult, and instead opted to make a new colony in Tasmania, which was called Van Diemen's Land during the 19th century. Van Diemen's Land prospered at the expense of Indigenous Australians and convict workers. In January 1827, John Batman and Joseph Gellibrand applied for a grant of land in the Port Phillip district, which was at the time part of the colony of New South Wales. The petitioners stated that they were prepared to bring with them sheep and cattle to the value of £4,000 to £5,000. This application was refused by the New South Wales Colonial Government. So John Batman went anyway in 1835 and signed an important treaty with the Indigenous Australians, which they signed somehow being able to understand European written language. Aside from this minor technicality, this document is significant in recognising the Indigenous Australians as the original owners of the land. Batman acquired 60,000 acres of land in what is now Melbourne. Batman paid the Kulin Nation with 40 blankets, 42 tomahawks, 130 knives, 62 pairs of scissors, 40 looking glasses, 250 handkerchiefs, 4 flannel jackets, and 150 pounds of flour. Batman's treaty opened the floodgates for more colonists to flood into Port Phillip District, as the new pastoral lands found by Batman had spread and pastoralists from Van Diemen's Land and New South Wales flocked to this new colony. People moved in for different reasons, however, as it was easy to get a plot of land for yourself, as it was a £10 squatting license, roughly about £6,105 sterling today, or $10,924 AUD. This license was issued by local officials to respectable folk to stock Crown land. In these early days, it didn't refer to any piece of country, but any piece of Crown land, which of course was deemed to be all of Australia. In practice and under common law, country that was already possessed by another squatter could not be occupied, so the race was on to be the first to get the best grasslands, to put a shepherd and stock on it and claim the run since it was theirs. There was no limit to how many sheep runs a squatter could have, and they could have as many as they wanted. Having flocks of sheep also required water, so many Europeans explored Australia's rivers such as the Murray-Darling River Basin, further adding to European colonial expansionism. When these squatters, explorers and colonists all started moving on to Indigenous land did conflict erupt. If Indigenous Australians killed sheep or tried to fight back, they would be killed. With this rapid colonisation, all the good watering holes and game-rich plants were soon gone. Diseases spread by Europeans moving inland devastated Indigenous populations, where historians such as Beverly Nance estimated that the Indigenous population of Port Phillip District to be 10,000 and declined by 80% in 18 years since colonisation. However, research done by historians since 1981, when Nance was writing, have concluded that the population was now 20,000 and not 10,000, and that the decline was more likely to be about 90% of the population. By 1845, in a mere decade, all the country, the large majority of European Australians now live in, had been seized, and colonisation had spread from Port Phillip Bay to Hervey Bay. The colonial government tried to roll back the squatters from claiming any land by granting them grazing rights rather than official land deeds. However, it was too late and the damage had been done. With the declining Indigenous population, the government had to protect the Indigenous Australians from settler violence and hence put them onto reservations and tried to integrate them into colonial society. A quick side note here that I find really interesting is that the Indigenous population actually increased during the 1840s. This was due to being forced to live on terrible swampland that the colonists didn't want. So what do you think about the fastest colonization in world history? Write a comment down below and subscribe for more free history content.